My gosh, this was quite the rabbit hole. Every now and then when I'm scrolling through my social media feed, I'll end up running into like posts and news or whatever that I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting. Let's kind of dig into it to find out there's something worth talking about in a video. And this is one of the situations where I found this, I started digging, and that rabbit hole would not end. At some point I had to pull back out and say, okay, I got enough information. I've dug far enough. I'm good. Let's talk about it. But anyways, a couple days ago, there was an announcement for anime adaptation of Mii-chan to Yamada-san. Now, at the time when it was announced, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Okay, cool. I like the art style, whatever. Didn't even think anything of it. Cut forward to today, suddenly we have a post being made by the production committee to say, don't worry, we heard you. We're going to handle this with utmost care. We have professionals on staff to handle everything properly. And that sparks the red flags. Like, wait, what happened here? Like, what feedback did you guys get? I went back to the original post, and my gosh, this thing blew up. This blew up. Not by the West. This wasn't Western people going, my gosh, how can this be adapted? This is by Japan. This is Japanese users that aren't happy with this. And there's a lot of context that is specifically Japanese because this hasn't even been like officially released over here. Like, I couldn't even find translations of this thing. That's how like unknown this is in the West. Like, you would probably have to find somebody that either has translated it for somebody or it done manually translate it yourself or whatever. But anyways, first things first, what is this about? You're probably wondering, what the hell is this about? Why is this so controversial? Well, the series follows this girl named Yamada, and she works as a hostess at this nightclub. And at some point, she starts to work with this girl named Mii-chan. Now, Mii-chan is described as a petite young woman, and she's also kind of clumsy and rather useless at anything. And that's basically the gist of it. It kind of gets into this thing where eventually something separates the two of them, yada, yada, yada. But anyways, going back to this whole situation. As I started kind of digging into this, kind of find out what's so controversial about this actual manga, I actually went back and I looked at the first chapter, kind of skimmed through it without like a really proper translation of it or anything like that. What I got a sense here of is, specifically this whole aspect of her being rather clumsy and useless. It seems to imply the fact that Mii-chan herself has sort of a development disability. That's like even her stature. Like, everything about her is the fact that she is developed very slowly. And this has caused her to be, yes, a little bit slow when it comes to a lot of things. And even in the manga, it seems to portray it in a way that's almost comedic. The fact that she gets in very inappropriate situations because of that. And so a lot of the posts that I've been able to find seem to go around that aspect, both positive and negatively. And the idea that a lot of people don't want this to exist. That the manga itself has caused a lot of problems for people with disabilities. It's caused a lot of stigma around disabilities. It's caused a lot of hatred. I've seen a lot of people mention the fact that it's used as a derogatory term. Mii-chan is something that people call people that, show signs of being slow to reacting to something or have disabilities. So it seems like a lot of people feel that the manga has, caused a lot of detriment to disabled people in Japan. And they're afraid of seeing this happening again. They don't want this to be adapted because they don't like the manga. That's a lot of what I'm seeing in a lot of the comments. To opposite to that is, yes, a lot of people that are concerned about the fact that the anime adaptation might censor that stuff, or that the West is going to have a heyday once it goes to the West. Like, they don't want it to exist because of that whole thing there. A lot of the comments that I've been seeing as well is just really kind of just a sheer fear about how the anime itself is going to really touch a lot of the more difficult subject matters, because it's got a lot of very uncomfortable and violent subject matters that it gets into, and they're afraid that the studio itself is not going to be able to handle it well, or if they go to TV broadcast, they're not going to be able to do it properly. And I think that's why a lot of the response by the studio itself comes with is particularly that kind of stuff. Let's get into the actual response that the studio ends up giving. They said, regarding the anime adaptation of Mii-chan and Yamada-san, with the announcement of the anime adaptation, we, the production committee, have sincerely taken to heart the various concerns and opinions that have been expressed regarding the content of the work and its depiction in the anime. We decided to adapt this work because we believe there is a value in expressing the original story through animation. While respecting the themes and messages of the original work, we will also take care to avoid reinforcing prejudice or misunderstandings. With guidance from experts, we will include appropriate content ratings and viewer advisories where necessary, and proceed with the production thoughtfully and responsibly. We appreciate your continued support of Mii-chan and Yamada-san. This, again, seems to be very much so addressing a lot of the concerns around how they're going to portray subjects about disability, which, again, I'm kind of curious how they're going to handle that, when, again, the manga seems to portray a lot of it with almost a comedic spin. Now, I do know that the author doesn't seem to be entirely, malicious about the aspect of disabilities. Even Mii-chan themselves seemingly being somebody that they created after a friend that they had. Yes, granted, they did make it a point to say this is completely fiction. This isn't a real story. This isn't based on a real story, but the character is based on a friend. So it does seem to imply the fact that they are, addressing this in a way that is at least acknowledging it, not really looking at it in a way that seems malicious. Looking into the interviews specifically around this manga, apparently the author had done a lot of reading of books on juvenile delinquency and psychology. And they also interviewed staff and organizations that provide life and legal advice for women in sex industries. And that also kind of leads into a lot of the criticism that this particular adaptation is having, is the fact that a lot of people don't like this author because they seem to put a lot of positive light on sex working. And a lot of that seems to be around the idea. I mean, even in this particular story, there's emphasis here that the main girl, Yamada, she, works in this industry because it pays well. Working as a hostess at this nightclub, it pays well. Now, granted, yes, nightclub does not equal sex work, but it in some cases does lead into it. I'm not sure exactly if Yamada does in the story or not, but it's a very touchy subject in general. Now, so far, my opinion, I'm fine with all that. Yes, I think it's upsetting. Yes, I think it's uncomfortable in a lot of cases. But at the same time, I am very much a supporter of freedom of speech. That if somebody wants to tell a story, they should be able to tell that story. If it doesn't break the law, do what the hell you want to do. That's been my stance for the longest time. And yes, even if this has depictions of people with disabilities in ways that I find uncomfortable, because I've had a lot of dealings with people with disabilities, even if I find it uncomfortable, I still want it to exist. I'm all about the idea of let the market decide. I have an understanding to people that this sucks, that, some people would take this manga and then go off and call people with disabilities Mii-chans. That sucks. But that's going to always be the case. If somebody's going to bully somebody with disability, they're going to do it, whether they have a name to throw at it or not. That's just unfortunately the reality of mankind, that people are nasty people. I don't think the existence of this manga or it being adapted is going to change anything. People are still going to be monsters. Yes, you can make an argument about it reinforcing stereotypes and stuff like that. I agree with you, but at the same time, again, I don't think that should be why something should exist or not exist. Because if that's the case, again, that's a door you're opening up that you can't close. You might as well get rid of everything, because literally everything's going to have some sort of stereotype or a joke in it that's going to be offensive to somebody. In the end, I kind of feel like this might potentially be one of those stories that, if adapted properly, can portray a sort of realization for a lot of people. That I think in some cases, when you have stories like this that sort of kind of Pandora box in maybe a joker here or there about how slow she is, eventually can lead into a sort of an eye-opening experience, an awakening, so to speak. Something similar to, akin to Takabi's Original Sin. Takabi's Original Sin sort of has this story where it opens up where, this person's being treated improperly. There's a little bit of this goofiness in this character that's kind of hanging out with them. Then at some point it gets into this bully character. And at some point you start to realize, okay, the bully character isn't what they seem. I love the ability to sort of kind of examine things that are uncomfortable and at some point learn something from it. And maybe this has some message in it, maybe it doesn't. But I'm all for checking it out. That all said, one criticism that I did see in a lot of the comments that I do agree with, I kept seeing the same picture over and over again, and at some point I realized it. A lot of people are upset specifically by the date of the announcement, July 25th, 2026. Which is 10 years after the mass stabbing of a Japanese care facility of people with disabilities. I almost feel like that's intentional. That doesn't seem like that is just happenstance. If that was intentional, I agree with people. I've seen a lot of people that are posting why would you do that today? Why would you make this post about this adaptation today? That just seems very disgusting. This doesn't even seem like dark humor or anything like that. This just seems mean. This kind of seems nasty. I don't know why you wouldn't think about that. Or again, if you did, why would you do that? This isn't one of those cases of all news is good news kind of situation. I think this is kind of just really bad taste. I don't know. It just feels intentional. I'm sorry, it feels intentional and it feels nasty. Either way, though, I'm on board. I mean, I'm gonna watch it, and again, a lot of it's gonna be with the fact that I like stories like this. I like stories that are kind of uncomfortable, even if I have had a significant dealing with people with mental disabilities and degradation and loss of facilities. Even though I've dealt with a lot of that kind of stuff, I'm for a story that might potentially show it in interesting ways. Even if at times it is portrayed in a way that's comedic, I'm fine with that. Maybe I'm just a little bit too twisted in the head. I'm perfectly fine with that kind of stuff. I've had family members that have had very serious disabilities, and in a lot of cases, the only way that we could get through it was laughing at certain things. That was the only way that we could mentally be able to deal with it without breaking. I don't know if that's what the author's going for. If the person that they made this character after was legitimately, disabled, or if this is just them poking fun. I don't know. But we'll see. Well, that's the whole situation with Mii-chan to Yamada-san. I'm sure there's a bunch more behind this again, because I stopped the rabbit hole at some point. People in the comment section can add more context, but it's crazy enough for people to make petitions and everything in Japan. They don't want it to exist, but based on the fact that they made a statement and said, "Hey, don't worry," it seems like they're going forward with it. So we'll see, though. We'll see how the West handles it too. Well, that's my thoughts on this whole situation. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative. If you did, hit the like button below. Till next time, y'all take care.